Hello friends, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have the Simon Says Stamp January 2020 card kit, and this one's no longer available, but I will have everything listed down below that I can find. This one's called the Snowflake Builder Card Kit, and let's go ahead and take a look at what came in this kit. You're going to get candy, of course. You need candy while you're crafting, right? Or at least some chocolate. You're also going to get this Distress Collage Medium, and you're going to get the Distress Alcohol ink in the color Patina. You're going to get these adorable little snow globes. Those are so stinking cute. And you're going to get this tiny little bottle of Distress Mica Flakes. Fantastic. And you're going to get 4 envelopes. These are the Simon Says Stamp envelopes in the color Metallic Silver, Metallic Sea Glass, Slate, and White. And they seal on their own. You'll get a 6x6 piece of Simon Says Stamp silver glitter paper. You're also going to get 5 sheets of the Kaiser Craft 6x6 paper. And this is pretty because on one side it has like a little bit of shimmer and the other side is sort of a realistic background. Pretty neat. And so yeah, you get 5 of those. Those are beautiful. You're also going to get the Simon Says Stamp Mini Snowflake. This is the Mandala Wafer die. You're going to get the Simon Says Stamp Snowflake Builder 6x8 stamp set, and I love how it has them all lined up as to which ones go with which. You'll get the IDEA sheet, and then you're going to get paper. You're going to get paper, Simon Says Stamp paper, the 120-pound white, and then 100-pound sea glass, smoke, and slate. So let's go ahead and get started with what we're going to make. Cards number 1 and 2 were inspired by a recent Jennifer McGuire video that I watched, and I think it had something to do with inlay stamping. I think that's what it was called. If I can remember, I will link that video down below. But what I did was I have my Bristol smooth cardstock, and I cut this down to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I wish I had trimmed it down to start, but you know, this was kind of a process for me. So I have this lined up inside of my MISTI, and I'm using one of my circle dies. This is an old circle nestability that I have, and I'm lining up the snowflakes that I want. They're first part stamps, so these are 2-step stamping snowflakes that I've noticed, and they're so cool. There's a lot of different sizes. You could use them separately, but I think it's a lot more fun to definitely do the two-step stamping. So I've got them lined up how I want them, and now I'm going to use my magic powder bag over my paper because I plan to do some embossing, and I'm going to use this Brutus Monroe sterling sparkle silver embossing powder. I thought that would go nicely. So I've used my magic powder bag. I'm wiping away the excess with my Nouveau brush, and then I'm going to ink up the stamps with my VersaMark ink, and then I'll close the door of the MISTI and I'll stamp that down. And then hoping that I have good coverage because, you know, it's clear so you can't tell until you've covered it with embossing powder. I'm going to go ahead and cover that with my embossing powder and let the excess flow into a coffee filter, and then I'll tap away the excess, and then I'm going to hit that with my heat tool till that is smooth and melted. I love this embossing powder because it does have a hint of glitter to it, which is fun. It gives that extra little sparkle. And then I'm going to put the second, I did it twice, so you don't see the second one, but I did do it twice. Now with this first one, I'm going to line up the second part of the stamp, and I'm going to do the same process over again, just lining up those stamps, pardon my head, because I want to make sure that I get those lined up nicely. And like I said, it's so impressive how many different snowflakes are in this stamp set and how you can layer them. And you could probably even layer separate or different ones with each other. That might be fun too. But I'll cover that again with my magic powder bag, ink up those snowflakes with the VersaMark ink, close the door of the MISTI, and then cover that with that sterling sparkle embossing powder. Love it. And then I'll again, once again, hit that with my heat tool. And I do that twice. So I've got 2 panels that are the exact same. Now I'm going to do my ink blending, and I'm only going to do ink blending on one of them. So I've pulled out my Waffle Flower Media Mat. That is nice because it pretty much holds the paper in place, and then your mess is contained on the Waffle Flower Media Mat. The first color that I've chosen is the Cracked Pistachio, and these are just the regular Distress inks. I'm going to go on the bottom with Peacock Feathers, and then I'm going to go over the middle with my Evergreen Bough. Now, as I was covering those snowflakes with the Distress inks, it was starting to darken up the snowflakes themselves. You can obviously wipe away whatever ink you get onto an embossed image, so that's not really that big of a deal. But I noticed with the sentiment, it just sort of got lost. So I'll fix that later, but yeah, right now it's not looking that fantastic. So I'll just, keep blending until I'm happy. And then my next step is actually, I'm going to buff away the excess, and it looks fine on the snowflakes, but we're going to put that panel and then my white panel into my makeshift splatter box, and we're going to cover that with some Frost Sheer Shimmer Spritz. So it'll give it some nice shimmer that you can see in the light, and it'll even give it a couple dots of shimmer as well, because I kind of half pumped it so it will get some big dots as well. And then we'll set those off to the side to dry a little bit before we move on to our next step, which is die cutting. You want to make sure it's good and dry before you actually die cut. So I've lined up my circle where I want it. I'll run that through my die cutting machine. And here's where I was thinking that, because I was going to get 2 cards out of this, that I thought, I should have made 3 panels, I guess. But I end up making it work, because here's where I'm looking like, oh, if I had made 3 panels, and maybe Jennifer McGuire talks about that. I don't know, because I don't remember. But I'm thinking, okay, what I need to do so that I can get 2 actual cards out of this is I need to die cut both of them. So as you can tell, I did trim down the Distress ink panel, and at this point I'm thinking, darn it, I shouldn't have done that, because I didn't know that I was going to have to die cut both of them like this. So I will line this up, leaving the piece in there, because your die will just kind of nestle right back in. So I'm trying to figure out exactly where those snowflakes are going to line up perfectly so that I can tape this down and I can cut this out. And this is where you see that I obviously had trimmed down the panel a little bit more. So I do need to trim down the white panel, and I will. All right, I'll run that through my die cutting machine, and it works no problem. I don't have any issue because those papers aren't real thick. So then I will grab out my card bases, but you can see how they'll line up nicely. Before I make the card bases, I'm going to stamp out the sentiment again. This is where I fix that sentiment. I'm going to use some black cardstock. I really wanted those to pop. So I'll once again use my magic powder bag over the black cardstock, inked it up with VersaMark ink, and covered that with Brutus Monroe's Alabaster embossing powder. And then I'll heat set those until those are smooth and melted, and then I will trim those down the way I want them, giving them a fishtail banner on one end. For this next part, I did grab out some foam, some craft foam, because I wanted to pop up those panels. So I had grabbed also a bigger nestability, and as you can tell, it kind of cut through on the one side, but that's not a big deal. I'll just put some liquid glue on that, put my panel down on top of it so that it gives it, enough of a lift, and I don't have to worry about it not getting through the mail okay. And then I'll put that same liquid glue on the back side of that. And then we're going to adhere that down to our card panel, which is just some of that white cardstock that came in the kit. All right, and then we're going to do it with the second one as well. This one stayed intact, so it wasn't as... I probably could have used the same size nestability that I did for the circles themselves, but I wanted to make sure that it didn't show through. Clearly, I don't think I would have had a problem, but this just ensured I didn't. And then we're going to do the same thing with that one by tacking it down to its card base. And then we'll be ready to start actually adhering the rest of the pieces. So I will take the colored piece, and I'm going to stick that in there and make sure that it is lined up the way that I want, along with the sentiment. And then I'm going to take the glue and put it right on where the sentiment was and tack down my sentiment that way. So that way I ensure it's mostly straight. And then I'll trim off the excess, and I'll use that same liquid glue to adhere my circle to the inside. So then we have a little circle inlay that matches perfectly with those snowflakes. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. And that's going to finish off cards number 1 and 2. I wish I had put some embellishments on there, but I think these turned out really nice, and they'll be easy mailers. For project number 3, I'm going to work with the little snow globes. So I have started off with some heat-resistant vellum. This is some lightweight vellum. Typically, I like to use the heavier weight vellum when I'm using the alcohol inks. But I've put down some blending solution that I had, and then I'm going to put down that Patina alcohol ink that came in the kit. And I'm just going to keep working this. I have a hand pump. This is actually a distress marker spritzer, but I'm using it as an air pump. Works perfectly for it. And then I'm going to just keep working that paper and that ink until I get the look that I want. And I'll show you what that ends up looking like. It took me a little bit of time, but I love how there's variation, even just using one color, how you can get just different veining and things like that. So I'm going to let that, make sure that's good and dry, because I plan to use embossing powder over the top of this. And before I do that, I'll put my magic powder bag down. And then I will ink up my stamp with some VersaMark ink. And I end up actually doing it 4 times. I only show you 2, but I end up doing it 4 times. And then I'm going to cover that with that same Brutus Monroe Sterling Sparkle embossing powder. And my thought process was, since I did 4, my thought process was I would go ahead and do both of the snow globes, but I end up needing all 4 of those for just one snow globe because I'd already tacked things together. And you'll see what I mean here in a little bit. So I heat set those till those were good and melted, and now I'm going to adhere one to the other. So I wanted it to be a 360 display. So with the vellum, that's why I chose vellum, because I could easily line those snowflakes up, and then I could cut around them because there isn't a die for this, or at least I don't have the die. I could cut around those and it wouldn't be an issue. Like it would be for the 360 degree snow globe. So all I'm doing is just cutting around those snowflakes, and then you'll be able to tell that I've got it 360. Snowflake on the front and snowflake on the back. And then I do the same thing with the other one. Again, the intention was to put it in the other snow globe, but I didn't think it through. So, all right, for my sentiment, I'm grabbing the You're Amazing, because that was the smallest one in the stamp set. And I thought it would be perfect inside this little snow globe, because you could give it to somebody and they could have it on their desk or something. And so I'm trimming that down, and I'm going to use my scissors, and I'm going to trim the words apart. So I will trim right in between Your and Amazing. And then I'm going to tack those on top of one of the snowflakes. Eventually. I don't do it right away. As a matter of fact, you won't see me do it because my camera ended up dying in the middle of this, probably because I was thinking it through so much. But in the process of this, I was like, wait a minute, how am I going to get that snowflake to stand up? So I had to make a little stand for it. And what I did was just cut down 2 tiny strips of white cardstock, the heavyweight cardstock, and I folded it one end so that could be the base of my piece. And then I will end up, as you can see, that's how it's going to look. I will glue those pieces together just using some of the multi-medium matte liquid adhesive. You could use the Collage medium, but the opening for that was a little too big for me, so that's why I didn't use it on my snowflakes. I will end up using it for parts of my snow globe. But this is what it ends up doing. I'm trying to see how tall I need it. I don't need it that tall, so I'm going to trim it down after I adhere my snowflake to it. So I will adhere my snowflake just using that same multi-medium matte. And then this is where I end up, of course, needing the other side of the snowflake. So I am going to use my reverse tweezers to hold those together, and I will eventually take the other snowflake and glue it to the back of that. So it'll be 360. And then I'll trim off the excess of the white paper that I have. And then I'm going to adhere the You're Amazing to the front of that. For the assembly of the snow globe, I had put down some of that Collage medium at the bottom. I adhered my little stand to it so you'll see that it's all standing up, and then I put some of those mica flakes on there as well. And this took a while to dry because I was fairly thick with it. I wanted to make sure it didn't go anywhere. And then I took my little tonic spoon and I took some more of that mica and I put it in the mica flakes and put those inside the snow globe themselves. Now I am just putting some of that Collage medium all over the inside, just around the edge. And this is what I'm talking about. It's pretty thick. I think if I were going to use this on a regular basis, I would have to get one of those little fine tipped things that I have for my other glues. So here's where I'm trying to so gingerly put this inside upside down without disturbing my snowflake too much. And then I just flip it over and adhere everything down nicely. And it worked out. It looks so cute and so cool. I wish I had done the other one. And now I can, now that I know how it works. But there it is. Take a look at that. It's so stinking cute. It's this tiny little snow globe that's 360. It's got the snowflake. And I don't know, just super, super fun. Now you could take your your Patina alcohol ink, and you could change the color of those little mica flakes with it, but I like the white, especially since I had already done the patina on the snowflake itself. But there's a lot of options, and so there it is, all in its little cuteness glory. Love how that turned out. Project number 4 is going to use that adorable little Mandala Snowflake die. I'm going to cut that out of the beautiful silver glitter paper from Simon Says Stamp. I'm going to cut that out 5 times. And so you'll see there are a lot of little pieces to it, and I just took my paper piercer and I'm going to poke out all those pieces. I did use a metal shim because I wasn't exactly sure, because this is a very detailed die. I wanted to make sure that it cut out easily, and I didn't try doing it without that because I just wanted to make sure that it cut very well. So like I said, I did it 5 times, and I'm poking all those pieces through just using my paper piercer. And then I'm going to cut down some of that pattern paper for my background. I'm going to stamp the banner onto some white cardstock just using some VersaMark Clear Nocturne ink. If I had been thinking, I would have chosen an alcohol-friendly ink, but I really wanted the crisp black, which my Memento does that as well, but I had stuck with the Nocturne by the VersaMark Clear Nocturne, just because it was handy. And I'm going to do the same thing with the sentiment on the inside. I never have enough thank yous, so I'm just going to stamp out thank you on the inside of that. And I'll set that off to the side to dry. And I'm going to stamp out another little sentiment just using a little scrap of black cardstock. And I'm telling you, I save all of them. I probably shouldn't, because my room looks like a war zone all the time. But I'm going to stamp the sentiment that says hello friend. I'll cover that with the Alabaster embossing powder by Brutus Monroe. And then I'll heat set that till that is smooth and melted. Now, as I said, I wish I had used alcohol friendly. I just was very, very careful with my Copic not to touch any of the edges, because it will bleed, and it will also bleed into your marker tip, so you don't want that. I am going to take my reverse tweezers and my multimedia matte adhesive, and I'm going to adhere down all of those snowflakes. It took a little bit of time because you want to be, selective as to where you put your glue down. But don't worry about all those edges that are sticking off. I am going to end up using those as well. So I will get all of these snowflakes adhered. So now that all those little beauties are adhered, I do have a couple of open spaces, but I'm not concerned about that. I am going to take that, flip it over, cut off the excess very, very carefully for each one of those that's sticking off, and I'm going to use all 3 of those pieces. So waste not, want not, right? If you're going to take the time, right? So I will just find places for all of those, and then we'll glue those down the same way I did before. My banner I did fussy cut out, and I put some foam tape on the back of that. And then I'm going to just peel off the release paper on my back, or my foam tape, and I'll adhere that down to the upper left-hand corner. And then I'm going to take my reverse tweezers to hold my other sentiment and put some Tombow Mono Multi on the back of that, because you want to make sure that you have a nice strong adhesive, since I am gluing this down over the top of some glitter cardstock. And then I'll take that whole thing, that whole panel, and I'll put some liquid glue on the back of that and adhere that down to one of the card bases from the cardstock that came in the kit. And then that is going to finish off project number 4. So pretty. For projects 5 and 6, I'm using a little bit of Yupo paper here, along with that alcohol blending solution and the patina again. So I'm putting this down fairly liberally, and I'm going to use my marker spritzer to move that around. I wanted to have a lot of veining, so I worked with this background quite a bit. I was kind of letting things dry a little bit, adding more of the color. I added a lot of color in the end, and at first, with so much blending solution down, you'll find that it's just kind of all blending together, but I felt like that made a really good base. And as it started to dry, I was able to get more veining. I love the look of all the veining, and so I just wanted to keep working with that and just keep getting some of that veining. And as you can see, it just, it's so pretty. And you can do that with one color, which is so cool. You wouldn't have to have all the colors to get all the different looks. You could definitely just do it with one color. And I'm so happy with how that started how that's starting to look. But I wanted to try my hand at foiling again. I know I have not been very successful in the past. So here I am trying. I am trying to find the balance, where it's not wet, but it's still tacky. So I'm holding it up in the light. You can see very, very clearly where it's very wet still. But you're just trying to find that happy medium in between where it's not completely dry, it's still a little tacky, and at this point I'm thinking I'm just not having any success. But I didn't give up because I thought, well, I've already got a little bit of that silver on there, I need to keep going. So I tried again, and I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to figure out the happy medium, and I feel like it's one of those things where the more you work with it, the more you practice with it, the better you will be with it. So here I am holding it up in the light again, trying to get, it to stick to places. I'm, still having some issues. In the process of this, when I was cutting down my foil, I actually snipped the inside of my hand. So just a disclosure, be careful with your scissors. And so I'm trying to wipe off my hand in between doing this as well. And I'm just loving how this is turning out. Now, this background, what I had planned to do with it wasn't as successful because you'll see I'm going to use the alcohol lift ink. This background by itself probably would have been just fine without trying to use the alcohol lift ink, but I did it anyway. So here's where I'm putting that gorgeous background into my mini Misty, and I have picked out the biggest snowflake in the stamp set, and I'm going to just put that down, close it over the Misty, pick it up, and then I'm going to ink that up with that alcohol lift ink. Now, if you've never used this stuff before, it is pretty cool. It will lift that ink right out of there. And then so you're going to pull that out, set that aside a little bit, and then I wanted to go ahead and see if I could get it to stamp on this dark, because that's the cool thing about it is you can stamp with it. And so I love how that looks. Now it looks really, really flat right now, but I'm okay with that. And I'm just going to clean that off with some archival ink cleaner. You will find that those alcohol inks will stain your stamps a little bit. At this point, you'll want to take a clean paper towel and you'll want to just kind of dab and then blend away. And then it will expose that stamped image a little bit more. All right, so now I'm going to take the second part of the snowflake stamp and I'm going to line that up into my Misty. That alcohol lift ink is really cool because what it basically does is it lifts the alcohol ink off of your Yupo paper and then it stays on your stamp, and so then you can stamp it down like I did earlier and I'll do again. So I'll ink that up, stamp it down, it'll lift the ink, I'll pull that out to set that aside, put my next piece in, and then stamp that down. And I do just love how that ends up looking. So once again, you'll dab and you'll buff away. And then I'm going to take the gray cardstock and put that into my splatter box, and I'm going to splatter that or spray that with some frost sheer shimmer spritz, something I'd used earlier. And then I'm also going to take some Distress Oxide Picket Fences paint, and I'm just going to splatter that all over the background. So that was once a very flat background. I now think is a fantastic background. And I'm going to do the same thing with my alcohol inked background as well. So that's the Yupo paper. And I stamped my sentiments the same way I did earlier. And then I put foam tape on the back of those after I fussy cut those out. And I'll adhere those down to the fronts of the cards. As a final bit of embellishment, I am going to put down some sequins. Now these sequins come from, I think it's like Lucky Shamrock, so they're an older pack of sequins from Simon Says Stamp, but they matched so beautifully I was able to pull out what I wanted with my crystal katana on my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and just adhere those down where I wanted them. And then this originally was only supposed to be one card, but when I realized, wait, you're using alcohol lift ink, you can stamp that ink onto another card. I am so happy that I decided to stamp it down because I really, really love, even though this is a very simple background, I love how that ended up turning out. That gray the gray cardstock background is just, oh, I love it. And I know you can't really see the snowflake too well on my alcohol ink background. I think that's because I made it super busy with all the veining, but it's still pretty. I don't mind it. It's just you can't see the snowflake as easily. So there they are, both of those cards all finished. I love how those turned out. And so I had 6 projects. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 6 projects that I made today. I would love to know which one was your favorite. If you had a favorite, go ahead and leave that down in the description box because that's probably one of my favorite parts about making all of these little projects and cards is knowing which ones you guys like. It helps me for in the future, cards that I might make and other things like that. So if you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. I typically have 3 to 4 videos a week, sometimes more. But yeah, I would love to have you. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye.